Jakarta is burning. At least 20 people dead, government buildings torched, and the streets filled with rage. What could drive one of Asia's most powerful nations into such deadly chaos? And could this unrest spiral into something even bigger? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the deadly protests rocking Indonesia. Protests that have already turned violent, forced the government to backtrack, and exposed deep cracks in one of the world's largest democracies. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand not just what's happening, but why these protests could reshape Indonesia's future and even impact global politics. On August 29, 2025, protests erupted across Indonesia after lawmakers quietly approved a series of lavish perks, housing, allowances, and pay raises for themselves. At a time when inflation is biting ordinary Indonesians and unemployment is rising, this move was seen as a slap in the face. By August 30th, protests had escalated into violence. In the capital, Jakarta, mobs stormed the streets. In Yogyakarta and Surabaya, government offices were set ablaze. And most dramatically, protesters torched the residence of Finance Minister Sri Mulyani, one of the country's most respected technocrats. At least 20 people were killed and dozens more injured. The government of President Prabowo Subianto was forced into a humiliating U-turn, canceling the perks package. But by then, the damage was done. The anger had already exploded. Why the protests turned deadly? Now, you might ask, why such an extreme reaction over perks? The truth is, this wasn't just about money. It was about corruption, inequality, and a government that many Indonesians feel is detached from their struggles. Indonesia is the world's fourth most populous country, with over 270 million people. Despite strong economic growth in the past, millions still live near the poverty line. Prices for fuel, rice, and daily necessities have surged in 2025. So when lawmakers decided to line their own pockets, it wasn't just greed, it was a symbol. A symbol that while the political elite thrives, ordinary Indonesians are left behind. Here's where it gets even more interesting. President Prabowo Subianto, a former general with a controversial past, came to power promising strong leadership and prosperity for all. His government has tried to position Indonesia as a rising regional power, balancing relations between China, the US, and ASEAN nations. But now, this crisis has shaken his image. By backtracking so quickly, he looked weak. And by allowing the perks bill to pass in the first place, he looked corrupt. Either way, his credibility has taken a serious hit. So, why should the world care about this? 1. Economic impact. Indonesia is a key player in global supply chains. It's the world's largest exporter of palm oil, a major supplier of nickel, critical for EV batteries, and a growing hub for manufacturing. Unrest here sends shockwaves across markets. 2. Geopolitical importance. Sitting between the Indian and Pacific Oceans, Indonesia controls vital sea lanes. Instability here could affect global trade routes, and rival powers like China and the US are always watching closely. 3. Regional example. If Indonesia's protests succeed in curbing corruption, it could inspire movements across Southeast Asia. But if they spiral out of control, it could destabilize the entire region. But let's not forget the human side. Ordinary people, students, workers, families, are risking their lives in the streets. They're not just protesting perks. They're protesting decades of corruption, broken promises, and inequality. Video footage from August 30th shows crowds chanting, "Turunkan Prabowo," meaning down with Prabowo. That's not just anger at perks. That's anger at the system itself. This brings us to a bigger question. Could these protests be Indonesia's version of the Arab Spring? Think about it. Widespread anger over corruption, youth-driven protests, heavy-handed police crackdowns, and a government struggling to keep control. History shows us that when these ingredients mix, you get either major reform or major unrest. And that's the million-dollar question for Indonesia right now. Will this end with reform, or will it spiral into chaos? What do you think? Are these protests a turning point for democracy in Indonesia, or will the government crack down and silence dissent? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear how you see this playing out. And if you're finding value in this deep dive, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss future breakdowns of the world's most important stories. Indonesia today is standing at a crossroads. The protests of August 2025 are more than just about perks. They're about dignity, justice, and accountability in one of the world's largest democracies. Whether this moment sparks reform or spirals into deeper chaos will depend not just on the politicians in Jakarta, but on the will of the people. And one thing is certain, the world is watching.